objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, they're admitted. You may publish 149 through 161.
Okay. Monitor me. All right, great. Mr. Carpenter, can you see your screen there?
50 years old, I need my glasses on, okay?
You and me both. All right, let's, I'm going to play for you State's Exhibit 149. We don't know where the volume is. We'll fine tune it when we get started. I don't hear anything. Mm-mm.
Hi, good morning.
Can you all hear it? You want it up a little bit more. Up, a little bit more.
So this is a firearms expert on the stand, and they're playing a video right now from the Rust movie, and the first thing that jumped out to me is this dude walking around with a shotgun, just pointing at everyone. It's a little behind, but we'll speed it up when it's a little slow.
I'm going to stop the video here. Are we okay?
Well, they said they'd like it up a little bit more.
Okay.
Sure.
Let's see if we can...
We can't do it. George says it's up to the max.
It's on the max on this one, too.
Let me double check what I've got here. Hang on. I don't think... let's go ahead and start over.
He's just pointing it. That's like a kid. He's like pointing it at a kid. Oh my god.
So I'm stopping that at 21 seconds.
Holy cow.
Do you see anything concerning in this video?
And the number one
Yes.
thing is muzzle discipline. That performer, that stunt performer, I'm assuming that's a stunt performer right there, has got what appears to be live weapons, and he's got zero muzzle discipline. He's holding the shotgun, and if you back it up to the beginning, he points it almost directly at, I believe it's Joel Souza, right at the front, or I'm not sure who that is, but he's handling that weapon. That weapon should be turned down at the ground, muzzle pointed down when he's carrying it, and his pistol should be holstered and never brought out, which he doesn't, but he carries the shotgun muzzle up. You can back it up a little bit more.
I think that's
Right.
David Halls.
Right about all in here. I guess that's the young child actor right there. So
Oh,
these are just
God.
examples of muzzle discipline. You never let the muzzle of the
Oh,
weapon cover
my
anything you're
God.
not willing to harm. That's rule
That's
number
Alec Baldwin's stunt double who discharged
Gutierrez is supposed to
a weapon,
be responsible
if that's
for
him.
what this actor is doing with this gun.
Well, from what I can see on the from the camera angles is I don't know if she's present here, and it appears that they have live weapons out without her presence. If she were present, I would ask that she. Well, I would think that she would tell that performer that you need to put that weapon pointed down at the ground. If she's standing there with him, correct his behavior with the weapon a bit.
So it's her responsibility to correct his unsafe handling of that gun.
I don't object to leading again.
She's repeating his testimony. Overruled.
Yes, what you would want to do is, and this is an example of a stunt performer that that I would have replaced if he could not handle the weapon properly and safely after instruction. He would have not had a live weapon.
Okay.
That is insane that he was just walking around with that.
Let's see if let me just kind of run through it real quick and
It
see.
And it's even more.
It literally
more important
pointed
than
at a
actor on
child.
set or any children on set. It's very important that you, even though you wouldn't say that there are layers of safety, but as a matter of principle and just professionalism, if you've got a child on set, it becomes an exponentially more important to make sure that safety is performed.
Okay, and I
And
have
it's also industry.
Yeah,
standards as
don't
well as
point guns at children or
just
anyone.
fast-forwarded the video
It's
up
pretty,
to 53
that's like common
seconds.
sense, right? I can't believe that.
And I'm not particularly interested in that young man. Did you see the same stunt performer back there on that patio?
I did.
And what was he doing?
He pointed it
Oh.
directly at the chest of the lady or the person in the white sweater, and then turned it around and pointed it at one of the other performers.
Is that Hannah in the hat? I don't think that's her.
And as the camera pans around, do you ever see Ms. Gutierrez?
I did not see her in that video, no.
And you
Joined him behind him. And then the brothers come out. Okay. Fleet first comes out and just as he's coming, just snatch him up.
Oh my god, oh my god. Oh my gosh.
Right? So we can go wider than the 75, yeah?
what's your concerns, if any, about what we're seeing here?
The same behavior by that same stunt performer.
No.
The gentleman in the hood.
This isn't footage of the shooting, but this is an armorer / expert on guns,
And this is very important.
and he is just looking at behind the scenes footage.
The reason we're here in court is that there were live rounds on the set of Rust. So
Oh shit.
to maintain one of the first safety rules is treat all weapons as they are always loaded. And that's to mitigate any problem that might happen downstream. So you have to assume that there may have been live rounds in any.
They're just showing behind the scenes footage and how
There were live rounds there. So
the actors were handling the guns horribly. Like this dude pointed a shotgun at a child. Several people.
Could have a live round in it. So then it makes it a lot more concerning when that double-barrel shotgun's pointed to that man's back.
Okay.
He gets shot, right? And then what do I do? They come out and grab me?
You're coming out around him. No, that's later. He sort of, he got him. He sort of fights his way free a little bit. You grab him. There's not a guy getting.
Now, is it your impression that they're filming a scene right now?
They're prepping to film. They're talking about creative decisions of how they want to speak, talk, stand, the action.
But they're not actually filming a take.
No.
Should these actors and stuntmen already have the guns in their possession if they're not filming?
No.
Oh, well, that's the same spot. Oh, is that later? This is the spot, yeah. He does get shot.
I mean, David Halls was witnessing all of this too. He's the first assistant director.
So we can just see if there's anything else that I want you to comment about on
She's just skipping through it.
50.
They're doing a rough rehearsal here. A rough rehearsal, just going through it.
So for the purposes of the rough rehearsal, is it acceptable for the actors, the camera isn't rolling yet, should they have the live firearms at this point?
If the armor is present and the weapons have been properly cleared, yes, they could have the firearms at this point.
Easy, Hollister. We got y'all coming with us now. And now you got to fight your way free. So let go, get loose a little bit, sort of throw an elbow back toward him. Ooh, funky.
Ooh, got a little fight to him. Come on, little piggy. You could honestly probably wrap the
Do you still have concerns about that?
I just
muzzle?
heard Hannah's
Tighten that up a
voice
bit,
in the background.
just because of what they're doing here and with the young actor in it as well. But yes, and that's just my way of doing things.
Okay. And I'm going to rewind and I want you to listen.
Come on, little piggy.
You could honestly probably wrap the shotgun if you wanted. That would be delicious.
Do you know whose voice that is?
I do not, and I did not quite hear that. I've got bad hearing. Sorry, terrible hearing.
This guy said he was 50 years old, but he does not look 50 years old. The guy testifying.
Come on, little piggy.
You could honestly probably wrap the shotgun if you wanted. That would be delicious.
That's where we like.
Do you know who that female's voice is? Okay. For the purposes of my next question, let's assume that that is the voice of Hannah Gutierrez.
Okay, and what did she say? I heard shotgun.
Let me replay it for you, because I'll get it wrong.
Got a little fight to him. Come on, little piggy.
You could honestly probably wrap the shotgun if you wanted. That would be delicious.
That's where we like them.
You could honestly
Wrap the shotgun?
wrap the shotgun.
For the scene, I think,
That's
is
right.
probably what they're discussing.
Right. Wrap it around him and hold him in place with it. Right.
So, assuming that's Ms. Gutierrez that we can hear, and she's present,
Right.
what should she be doing with this stuntman that we've seen with his bad muzzle discipline?
Right. She, like I say, tightening him up. Pull him off. Discreetly and starting off, say, hey, look, be careful where you point the muzzle of the weapon. You're swinging it around pretty haphazardly. Hopefully it's already been checked and checked properly. Then give him a little coaching.
I'm just fast forwarding to see if there's
Hi,
any other
Ray.
places I want to stop.
I know, right? She has been serving every day. Like, full beat, hair, nails, outfit, everything. It's so funny.
It's also of note here is if you're going to use that scene that way and you're going to handle the shotgun,
Best dressed
then
in the
clear
courtroom.
crew out, get some proximity, in areas of safe zones that you operate within. It's a lot of people walking in and out. There's a lot of crew in and out of there. You just need to get that whole area under control a bit better.
Okay. And where I've stopped it here, I have stopped States Exhibit 150 at 5 minutes and 2 seconds.
Oh shoot, is it quiet? I can turn it up.
What do you see with regard to that shotgun right now?
It's pointed at the child, I'd say the young
Turning
child,
it up.
the young actor.
Sorry about that.
And it's not. Understand that if you're there are scenes in movies that require, weapons to be pointed in certain directions, but you take safeguards and measures prior to that. Just standing in the middle of a rough rehearsal and doing this thing is one level above him walking around with it in between takes.
Okay.
Is that better?
Should the actors or stuntmen walk around with their live firearms in between takes?
No.
Why not?
Again, it opens the door to any unsafe act that might occur, from loss of the weapon, like we talked about, to leaving it somewhere. I've seen all of these things occur on a movie set, to lack of control. And at the end of the day, control is how you manage safety.
Okay.
Okay. All right, sound, can we wire bone and cleat, please? Where's sound?
Are you gonna aim like that?
Yeah.
A little higher. Oh, we just gone.
And right there, were we in between takes?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And again, do you see anything problematic?
Same stunt performer. I would have taken that weapon away from him well before all of that.
Okay.
Or instructed him, and if he couldn't follow instruction, I would have taken it away from him.
Okay. States Exhibit 151.
try and have the courage. That was a 0.
Do you see Ms. Gutierrez there?
I do.
And you've seen this video before, right?
I have.
She looks so
And
different.
then 8 seconds, just for the
Wow.
record.
0.
What is Ms. Gutierrez doing?
She's holding that double-barrel shotgun pointed up at her neck and face.
Oh my god.
Why would that be concerning to you?
Never let the muzzle of the weapon cover anything you're not willing to harm. It's a fundamental safety rule. You treat all weapons as they're always loaded. Also fundamental safety rule.
How would you expect proper gun safety on a movie set if the armorer is not following basic gun safety?
That's a very good question. It would be hard to implement.
All right. States Exhibit 152.
There he is, pointing that shotgun at
Same problem
everybody.
with that guy in that video.
Same problem.
Same guy.
And I don't know where Ms. Gutierrez is. Of course, the camera's only facing one direction, so I don't know if she's behind camera or anything, but I don't see her present.
And if she is present, she's supposed to do something about that, right?
Well, you take the weapon up in between scenes. In between any usage on camera, you take the weapons up.
Okay.
Secure them.
And what?
Check them, and then recheck them when they go back out.
We'll go through that a little bit. What is the armorer supposed to do if you've got 3 or 4 actors or stuntmen that all have weapons and we're in between takes? Are you really required to go and collect those weapons from those actors and stuntmen?
That is correct. And if you can't do it on your own, then you need to put an additional armorer on set that can do it with you. And so I've worked in scenes where we've had hundreds of extras, and we did the miniseries Roots. We did the Battle of Fort Pillow there, and we had, I'm guessing, had 18 armorers on that day, or 16. It was a lot. Exact number I can't remember. But I've had many gunfight scenes where you had a multitude of people shooting machine guns and around. And if you're skilled enough that you can maintain control in one small area of take, in other words, if they're filming a gunfight scene and it's just the area of the juror's box, then it's easy to control. But if they're spread out over a large area, you need additional help. But you have to take them up.
There was only one armorer, and they had her working 2 jobs.
States Exhibit 153.
Full time. Downspace?
Is there a reflection issue on the windows or no?
No. I'm staying out of it. Hey, Billy Mark. And set, ready, and action. Please. Whoa. Easy, Hollister. You coming with us now? Who's coming? Come on. You're out too good. We'll see. Calm yourself down a little bit. Take a deep breath.
Pointing the gun at the kid. I mean, it's a movie, don't they, like, do that shit?
I still think you need to be coming out a little sooner, if possible.
Yeah?
But, like, knowing what we know now, what if
So,
it had a
Was it
freaking
your
live
impression
round?
from watching that video that they were actually filming a take at that point?
Yes.
And what happened when the filming was over?
The camera panned around approximately 90 degrees left.
Well, let me ask you this. What happened with the actors' guns when the take was over?
I didn't see the full end of it, but they were still holding them, standing there with them.
Okay. And is that the point when the armor is supposed to come in and take them away?
Yes, exactly. And if you're filming the scene, they can be secured right there. You can have your cart that you work off of. You're doing this scene. This is the scene with the firearms in it. You can assume, unless they're using a B unit, which is a secondary filming unit, you're only filming one scene at one time. So whatever that scene is that you're filming, you can be right there present to it, and then the camera goes to the next scene. So it's not as if there were 4 or 5 scenes filming simultaneously.
Okay. So in this particular video, or in this particular circumstance, is it your opinion that Ms. Gutierrez needed to, when the camera stops, go in, take the weapons, and keep them secured until the next rolling of the film?
Your Honor, objection leading.
I think
No.
it's a direct question. I don't think it's leading.
The gun didn't
Yes,
always
unless, of
have
course,
live ammunition, but there was
Unless, of course, they're gonna
6
steal
rounds,
the scene, unless-
6 live rounds found on set,
safe. And this is
in
what I'm
addition
talking
to
about.
the
If
one
you're
that
never going to change
killed
anything, and
Halyna
you
Hutchins.
film that scene over and over again, then sure, leave it with the performers as long as you're standing there watching them. But the minute that they walk off from in front of that camera, the weapons come back to the cart or come back to the armor. If they're in front of camera standing right there and they're like, hey, stand right there, nobody move, 30 seconds, we're going to roll again. And then we can do
Hannah
that
is
all day
not
long if you want to.
looking good right now.
So, in your experience, when
She
the
is
armor
not looking
takes
good.
the weapons from the actor, and then a few minutes later, we're now filming another. We're going to do another take of that same scene. What's the procedure? Do you just hand the guns right back to the actors?
No, redundancy is never a thing when it comes to safety. So you want to be redundant. Have, 1 is none, 2 is 1 mentality. You take that weapon, you move it back into the scene, you do a quick check. Doesn't take but a moment. Open it up, clear it with your DP, clear it with your first AD, show the actors clear, and hand it back out. Moments.
And when you do that, are you showing them the ammunition?
If they're using dummies, yes.
Okay. And you're showing them the same ammunition again?
That's right.
Okay. States Exhibit 154.
Ready, and action. Come on, kids. Let's go. Okay, let's reset.
Oh God, it's like it was pointed
have
right
any
at that
concerns
guy's
about
face.
that?
Same, pretty much the same as before.
Same guy, same behavior.
Same guy.
She looks really bad, but the defense is gonna tear apart
States Exhibit 155.
the production on cross-examine.
Almost. A wire.
So like, careful of the human behind you. Gotcha. So you just shoot it like this, right?
Oh
And what
shit!
are we doing here?
Oh
States Exhibit
shit!
155.
He actually
my
did a
God.
360-degree muzzle discipline breach on that one. So he went around in a full circle with the muzzle at everyone in the vicinity, and then he handed
That
the weapon to the
was
young
so
actor.
bad.
And
Okay, can we get a replay on
in a
that?
circumstance like
Let's just get a quick replay. That is a child.
Almost. A wire.
So like, careful of the human behind you. Gotcha. So you just shoot it like this, right?
and what are we doing here? States Exhibit 155.
He actually did a 360-degree muzzle discipline breach on that one. So he went around in a full circle with the muzzle at everyone in the vicinity, and then he handed the weapon to the young actor.
And in a circumstance like this, what is the responsibility of the armorer?
Just to intercede. I would have walked in. Let's just assume this is the first time I saw this, and I was standing right behind where you're seeing camera. I would have saw him with the muzzle. I just said, hey, Bill, or whatever his name is. I'd say, Bill, listen, make sure you keep that thing slung down while I'm sitting here watching you if we're about to, do this scene. Now, if we're not about to do the scene, he doesn't even have the weapon at all, so it's a moot point. But let's assume
That was
we're
crazy.
just about to film this, and I've given it and done the safety checks.
Hi, Maris.
And if I had seen him handing a weapon off to anyone, much less a young, underage person, that would have been the end of that. He would not have been handling a weapon anymore. In my, if anything to do with me personally.
Let's say hypothetically you do that. You say, that's it. You don't get to handle weapons anymore.
That guy took it from the kid like,
and let's say
oh, be
somebody from
careful, but he
production
was
comes
pointing
to you
it
and
at the
says,
kid.
Look, that guy needs to handle that weapon. What do you do?
And this exact thing has happened before, and I've been in that exact predicament before, and or I shouldn't say predicament, I should say situation, because it's only that if you allow it to be. I told him, I said he's unsafe with the weapon handling, and I've instructed him. He is not listening, and I'm not going to have an accident occur on the set, and I don't want it, and you sure don't want it. So if he needs something, we can give him a replica. We can change it up. He doesn't need to use. We can go get a replica, this, that, or the other that he can use. We're not firing in this scene, so it should be fine. Or maybe we just hand him off, a replica handgun, and he doesn't even use a long gun in the scene. We use a stick or a staff or whatever. There are ways around this, and at the end of the day, it's always been a suggestion placed correctly and professionally is generally listened to.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just finish that.
All right, here we go. Hold it hard, right. That button is the button.
So after the weapon was taken back from the child, are you still seeing that same bad behavior from that stunt performer?
Yeah, he's toying with the weapon at this point.
States Exhibit 156.
Okay, carry on. Go ahead, put it in and put it on 24. Then I go 3, 2, 1. There you go. Yeah, do it.
And did you just see Ms. Gutierrez come into the frame?
Yeah, they should have been using sticks. That's what it seems like.
Okay, carry on. Go ahead, put it in and put it on 24. Then I go 3, 2.
Is that guy pointing with his gun?
2, 1. There you go.
Do you see what she's doing?
She's just walking in front of frame.
Does she have anything in her hand?
Could you back it up one more time, please? I was watching the stunt performer behind him. Okay, she's carrying the double barrel shotgun, it looks like. Muzzle end up.
Is that a proper way to carry that gun?
It is not.
Is that a safe way to carry that gun?
It is not. And you see the stunt performer in the rear swinging that handgun around, which what I was watching. He was actually pointing. He was talking and pointing with his firearm. Now, you asked previously why you don't hand off live firearms to stunt performers. One of the reasons, there's your reasons right there. If they don't have it in their hand until they need it, then there's no chance of them being unsafe with it.
I'm going to try to get up to what you're describing. You saw that in this video?
Yes, it's the guy with the
Right there.
Right there. He's talking and discussing what he's doing and using his pistol as a pointing stick. Again, we have to assume all weapons are always loaded, and in this case, may well have been.
Okay.
We're going to take our morning bathroom breaks. Please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court. Jurors.
Okay, I can fast forward. So, hold up. We're fast forwarding.
To our audio. Let me see.
Oh my god, are they gonna have more technical difficulties? Oh no, we're good. We're good.
Minutes away, I'll do my final wire and we'll go hot.
Here, I'm gonna just back it up so we can. 157.
What do you need to do, Thomas? As soon as you guys are 3 minutes away, I'll do my final wire and we'll go hot. Okay. Get hot? You need to do anything? No, I'm not hot yet. Okay, wait. I want to see where the camera so everybody knows the time. We'll get all that shit back once we wire him and we know where it's got to be. Then we'll okay. We need to do the battery off and done now.
Did you see anything noteworthy in that clip?
Just muzzle discipline.
You said muzzle discipline?
And also a weapon.
Get a little closer to that microphone, would you?
My apologies, I'm sorry. Muzzle discipline, but more importantly, there was a weapon exchange that occurred with, I didn't see a safety check between those weapons. Not sure if it was a replica that she was handing off or a live firearm.
I wonder though what other movie sets look like. Or is this just completely out of the ordinary?
Assuming that it was two live weapons being exchanged, I'm not exactly sure why that would have occurred. Then there should have been a safety check between those two. If he had a replica, then that would have been a good thing that he had a replica previously. But then if she handed him off a live gun, at that point in time, there should have been a safety check. But more likely in this particular circumstance, he's wired at the back and he's about to do a stunt where they're going to probably do a dead man's snatch. They're going to snatch him into that wall, probably when he's been fired upon or whatnot. Having said that, they probably took the live weapon and handed him a replica, a soft replica, so he wouldn't get hurt when he lands on the ground, metal object in his hand and whatnot. So that probably was an exchange for a soft rubber replica gun.
Okay.
That's an assumption. I'm not sure.
And do you have a comment on Ms. Gutierrez's handling of that shotgun that she's carrying?
She's still carrying it by the muzzle end. That looks like a different shotgun actually than the previous one.
I agree. It's just, it's messed up all around.
State's Exhibit 158.
So let's wait before we hook him up.
Yeah, otherwise he can catch all sorts of
Now,
stuff.
I'm not saying he won't get blood on the rim. I don't know how these are.
No worries. Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes.
How, Thomas, how much blood do you think's gonna come out? If the lens is right here. It'll get on you from there. It'll get on the lens here. It'll get on you.
Okay, Ray, so this could be just, I mean, it looks wild to me. How they're just pointing the weapons.
Assuming Miss Gutierrez is behind camera, then they would be
Good
prepping
morning.
for that scene and everything would have been in place. So no, assuming she's there.
Okay. And let me ask you this.
That's a good point.
In addition to seeing videos from the production outfitters behind
I think
the
her
scenes,
dad is going to testify.
Collection, have you also
I hope
seen
so.
some of the actual movie takes that were filmed during the 12 days of filming for Rust?
Yes.
I'm going to play for you State's Exhibit 59, which is going to be from that collection.
There was one additional.
Hey, Mark, stop. 159. I apologize.
There was one additional video in that exhibit. Are we continuing on with the behind the scenes now?
No, I was gonna move us to the Rust Productions videos.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Okay.
Well, just a minute. So did you publish 158, I guess is the question. Is that what the question is?
Yes, I published 158. Now we're moving on to 159.
Okay.
And Mr. Carpenter, I think I understand your question. Let's go ahead and move on to these.
Copy that.
Okay.
Also, the defense had an expert witness for gun safety, like an armorer, but the judge denied letting them testify because they submitted it too late.
Set, ready, and action. One more. I forgot the recoil stuff. No, right away. Let's reload. Here we go. So, Halyna. Hi.
Oh shit.
Here
He
we go.
is.
Come on. Well, I had to go closer.
Oh my god, he is rushing them. He's like, reload.
We should have had 2 guns and both were reloaded.
That's
Hang on
crazy.
just a second. I think at the beginning, for some reason, what I want to show you is out of this frame. Bear with me.
Yeah, I'm most excited
Mr.
for the
Bowe, how can I
defense.
do frame by frame?
By the way, if I was live streaming on TikTok right now, it would get suspended immediately just for those guns going off.
Okay. Okay. Let me see if I can get to what I wanted to visit with you about.
Yeah, I'm ready to see the defense.
And for the record, I'm just
Yesterday was
fast-forwarding
spicy.
frame by frame.
The state and defense got into it, like really bad. So bad the judge was like, all right, we're taking a break. The defense, Jason Bowles, was like beet red. He was like pissed.
Sorry, that takes a long time. I apologize.
The clicking is so funny. This is why we need young people in the courtroom, like tech-savvy people, because I think a trial would be like 2 days shorter if they just had some technically savvy people.
Let me ask you
Tech
this.
savvy.
Mr. Lewis, do you see the issue?
I do.
Okay.
I think
You're going to help me fix that?
I am.
Okay. But for the purposes of this, just so that we can move on, have you seen this video where the frame is a little bit bigger and you can see someone over on the far right side of the frame? And I can't play it on that.
I know.
Okay.
I just want to make sure this is the right thing you're looking for.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. We'll swap it out. I'm gonna show you the one that has the wider frame. I apologize for that error. But we'll go ahead and go through your testimony now. So
I agree, comrade.
The other wider frame of this video, what do you see over on the right-hand side?
Well, you have 2 cameras operating in that particular scene. If it's the one I'm
Alec
thinking
Baldwin
of, you got an
was
A cam and a B cam,
rushing her.
meaning they're filming it from 2 different locations. So you're actually seeing from one of the camera angles that has an entire operating crew behind it, which will have a first aid. So they'll have a camera operator, etc., behind that camera. So imagine a crew of people, a few people behind that camera, and then you've got the other camera that you're actually seeing in frame being filmed. And a lot of times in an action sequence, they'll film it from 2 different angles, so you can cut and chop it up in editorial. So that's what you're going to be seeing if it's the video that I'm remembering correctly.
Okay, and the gentleman here will pull it and we'll play it. Generally speaking, and we're going to play the other video. Well, you know what? Let's move to the. I think this is. I don't recall if this is Cam A or Cam B. Oh, okay.
Yeah, everyone was stretched way too thin. And this guy has
They're
already
keeping me
said
straight
things
here, let's
about
see.
like safety and like his protocols
Hey,
that
Mark.
Hannah didn't even have access to.
Set, ready, and action.
What's happening there? Do you see this over on the right here?
So keep in mind, as I said previously, you will see a camera crew operating, and he's
Was
doing
he
what's called a
holding two
handheld right there.
guns?
He's hand holding the camera and moving it, meaning it's not on a dolly or a track or anything of that nature. So that camera operator's hand holding that piece of equipment with operators behind him. Remember that the frame that you're seeing here has that exact same situation going on as well behind this. So it's a number of people out here, both behind that camera and behind the one that we're seeing POV from, okay? And that appears to be a full flash blank just from the report, the amount of powder that's leaving the barrel, the amount of report and gun smoke that's coming out. I would imagine that's a full flash blank. And one of the first rounds that he fired actually incapacitated the camera and operator in the smoke, meaning he was entirely too close to that camera to fire that. We have a minimum amount of distance that is required for safety when you're firing blanks, depending on what type of blank you're firing, and that was well within the safety zone.
And let's say you're wrong. Let's say that wasn't a full load blank. Let's say it was a half load or a quarter load. How does that? Well, let me stop for just a second and let me ask you this. Can you explain to the jury, talk to them a little bit about blank rounds and whether or not blank rounds can be dangerous?
Sure. So a few years back, the local 600, which is a camera union, and the gentleman that works in that union, he's one of their business reps, asked me to do a soft tissue video series showing the effects of soft tissue from blanks. A tomato is a very good example of the human skin from a very non-scientific standpoint, right? But the internal part of a tomato and the external being the skin tissue is a very good example. So we took a tomato and at different distances fired quarter flash, half flash, full flash blanks at that tomato in high-speed cameras to show the effects of it. You also get down to blanks that get into 1.8, 1.6, 2.3, but that's really, really small things that just make the firearm operate if it's a semi or fully automatic, and not something that we would be dealing with here. So getting back to your point directly, we did that video series, and a full flash blank from the distance of easily 6 feet to 8 feet can peel the skin off and do damage, trauma to the inside of it. Half flash blank at 4 to 6 feet, so forth and so on. Again, not an exact distance ratio to hear it today in court, but well within any distance that's being fired there would have done damage to human tissue if it would hit it. And you can almost assuredly say that was a full flash blank from the distance of the report. You can see the smoke travel from the muzzle, which is the area of the firearm where a projectile technically would come out, from the muzzle end of that weapon to the end of that initial smoke stream, which if you had a high-speed enough camera, you would see fire in there as well. It's gunpowder burning inside of that smoke. You can see that it's all the way to the camera, which is approximately, I would say that's about 8 feet, 7 to 8 feet.
Is there when a blank is fired, is it possible that something is expelled from the firearm?
There is things expelled from the firearm. Now, movie blanks are a bit different than, say, a military blank because they're meant to be shot in closer proximities, et cetera, and you want all the particulates inside of the casing, i.e. the gunpowder, anything inside of there, to completely and totally burn up, almost like magic powder. You've seen the magicians throw the thing and all that paper burns up instantaneously. Something to the effect of that. You would want it all to burn up as quickly as possible the minute it is ignited and leaves the muzzle of that weapon. Okay, so there is a little bit of difference. However, it still sends unburnt powder and particulates out of that muzzle, which can put an eye out, burn the skin, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
Not to mention the concussive force of it alone.
Okay, so I'm going to get to that frame right there. Specifically that frame, what's concerning?
Well, he's within, outside of the bounds of safe distance. In other words, he's well within the no-go zone there, and he's pointing and firing the weapon directly at camera. Now, there are particular scenes which are set up in a very specific and controlled manner that you can, point at or near camera. But for the most part, you always instruct any of your performers to always aim off camera. Never aim directly at somebody, aim directly off of them, even if it's 4 or 5 inches or a foot or two, right? Now, I'm just speaking with an empty weapon that's already been cleared, not to mention a blank, where this is not even what we're talking about now. When you just generally aim a weapon, cheat it to the side a little bit. But in this particular case, we're firing the blank. You would want to have 4 feet off camera angle that he should be shooting to the side. And keep in mind, no camera crew behind there as well. That entire right-hand side or right camera of where he's shooting should be completely clear of any personnel, and he should be shooting at least 4 feet off to the right of that camera, and he should be at least 21 feet away.
Okay.
Halyna Hutchins was so close to Alec Baldwin when she was shot.
One more. I forgot the recoil stuff. No, right away. Let's reload. Here we go. So, Halyna, hi.
How many movie sets do you think you've worked on?
Sarah Zachary.
100.
That conduct that we're seeing on the part of Mr. Baldwin, is that typical conduct from an actor on a movie set?
No.
Why not?
Well, number one, he's basically instructing the armor how to do their job at that point, telling them that we should have had the gun a second reload, hurry up, give it to me, fast. This is that moment. This is that moment I spoke about earlier. This is that moment that you need to stop and say, no, I'm not going to hurry up, I'm going to slow down. And we don't need to be, passing off weapons this fast or loading guns this fast. This is creating an unsafe and nerve-wracking situation, to describe it in more layman's terms. Always on any kind of live training exercise, military training.
Who's going to speak up against Alec Baldwin now?
Put people in a nervous position.
Who's going to speak up against him?
It's a level of stress that's necessary in realism training for military and law enforcement. This is not that. This should be separate and apart from that, and even when that's being done under those circumstances, it's done in a controlled manner. But rushing with firearms and telling someone to rush with firearms is not normal nor accepted.
Okay. And for the purposes of a couple follow-up questions, I want you to assume that that gentleman there in the black with blonde hair is the first assistant director.
Hello, thanks for coming over. I got suspended on TikTok Live.
Come on. Well, I had to go closer because Danny did, so. You want We should have 2 guns and both were reloading. No. Okay.
Did you see him just walk away?
I did.
What's your opinion on that?
I don't really know what he was doing in that particular moment. I saw Miss Gutierrez attempting to reload that weapon as fast as she could.
Did you see how?
Of course, assuming it's blanks.
She was rushing.
The same weapon she was doing it. It looked like the prop master may have been holding lever action over her shoulder. Not really sure what Mr. Halls was doing.
Okay. Is Mr. Halls the person who's responsible for doing the weapons check with Ms. Gutierrez?
He would be if you were doing it in that particular scene, just reloading blanks to it. Would be a quick, check with the armorer and with the actors. They're loading it to make sure their blanks being loaded. But many times in a situation like that where you're being rushed to that extent, that's when safety starts falling on the
defense is going to be all over that.
Could you see, and I can replay the last few seconds.
Because David Hall's got a plea deal.
Gutierrez was getting her dummy rounds.
You could replay it. I didn't.
Let me back up a little more.
I forgot the recoil stuff. No, right away. Let's reload. Here we go. So, Halyna, hi.
Yeah, for the gun.
Come on. Well, I had to go closer.
We can show guns on YouTube. Woo! Guns, drugs.
We should have 2 guns and both were reloading. Okay.
Can you see in the video where she's getting her rounds from?
It looks like she was getting the blank rounds, assuming they're about to fire again from her fanny pack.
And would that be advisable?
I prefer to operate out of a secured box for my blanks that have been pre-checked prior to. Again, that may be her protocol, operating off. But in my experience, having multiple things in one area together that are not sequestered apart from one another just leans for potential trouble downstream.
Okay. I'm going to go back to State's Exhibit 159. So 159 is the other camera angle of 160, where we can see 160 is where we can see the cameraman on the side. Let's do 159 again now that it has a little more context.
Set, ready, and action.
Could you, in that moment, see the smoke go directly at the camera?
Good.
Frame by frame, please. Oh, that might be more than I can do. Okay. So that shot, when he fires the gun that time, did we see that initial shot from the other camera?
It appears to be maybe the first one or the second one. I think the second one was the more concerning.
Okay.
Not sure where that started from.
That was a lot of smoke. A lot of smoke.
What are we looking at here?
Well, the camera lens has got smoke obscuring it. Cameras can be, relatively tricky when you're viewing it from the angle of the camera and after that. But the better angle on that was the first angle from the first one. But again, it's difficult to see. You just see smoke over the lens.
Having seen the other video, is it your opinion that the smoke that we are seeing right here is from the gun being fired at the camera?
Correct. I mean, the other camera told the story of what occurred there, the more correctly.
Okay.
Big mark.
All right, State's Exhibit 161.
No, just
Yeah? When you drop your arm, that means he's 10 feet away. I can't see how close he is, but I want to be almost up by the time he gets here.
No, I'm going to go into this.
yeah.
Well, let me show you something. Hold on. Step back to your original mark. So 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 I'm getting up.
Right.
Then when he drops his arm, Halyna get out. He drops his arm. That means Brady's close. I'm going to start to really get up.
Okay.
Do you see anything concerning here?
He's doing what we saw previously in one of the other videos.
He's
with
pointing
the
with the
performer. He's
gun.
using the weapon as a pointing stick, like it's his finger.
And you've seen this video before.
I have.
And what is your understanding about what that gun's loaded with?
It's loaded with probably full flash blanks, but blanks.
Okay. When Mr. Baldwin behaves this way and is using the revolver as a pointer, what is the responsibility on the part of Ms. Gutierrez?
To intercede and correct any unsafe behavior. Now, obviously, again, we're talking about the nuances of doing it. I would start off pulling him aside or talking to him individually and say, if we could, let's be careful with that muzzle. Remember muzzle discipline. I even have a little thing that I talk to when I hand a weapon off to an actor, and it's what I used to say back in the day. I would say control, and the actors would have to repeat the word control to me. And by repetitively doing that, it becomes a mental training technique to teach them that they are now fully in control of that weapon, and their actions while they have it is on them. They are part of that other side of that coin we talked about. If moving past that, I was not getting any result on that, I would have to intercede in this on-camera moment or in rehearsal moment. And then from there, it just depends on whether or not they want to be safe on scene or they want to find somebody else.
Okay. All right, we will go ahead and play from 23 seconds.
Here we go. Let's try it.
And everyone needs to be right here, like in the path of the gun. Could you please move?
Did you hear that?
I did.
Tell us what's going on there.
It sounded like Miss Gutierrez attempting to correct the fact that she knew that Mr. Baldwin was pointing that weapon in an unsafe manner, and she was attempting to move the crew out of the path of where he was pointing it, knowing that it was loaded with blanks.
Is there a problem with attempting to move the crew?
That's one of the two things that should be occurring. You identify the problem that created the fact that the crew was in an unsafe position, and then you clear out the crew. And she was attempting to, I would assume, not correct Mr. Baldwin, but try to make the crew in a more safe position.
Okay. Did you hear that?
Say quarter loads? Is that what she said?
And do you know whether or not it was actually a quarter load?
I do not know.
Okay. In terms of the timing of Ms. Gutierrez telling, and why don't you give the ladies and gentlemen of the jury an idea of how many people are behind this camera?
So in a particular scene like this, assume they're shooting it with one camera, camera A, okay? Then you're going to have your sound, you're going to have your sound mixer, you're going to have your camera, your DP, director of photography, you're going to have your first AC, generally a focus puller, first assistant camera, you'll have a second assistant camera. More than likely wardrobe is going to be on set as well, hair and makeup as well. You could have even PAs on set standing there. So you're looking at anywhere in a scene like this between, 6 and 11 people out there.
Is it advisable?
I'm sorry, props, of course. I left props out.
Okay. Is it advisable for Ms. Gutierrez to wait until the last minute to tell the crew to get out of the way?
No, the direction of firing should have been established prior to the scene. Which way is Mr. Baldwin going to point that weapon? Which way is Mr. Baldwin going to discharge that weapon? Where he's going to walk and in what angle is he going to walk? His starting point, his ending point, and you take all of those things into consideration along with the type of load he's firing, and then you move your crew out appropriately.
Okay.
Second, if I'm going to shoot right, you want to go on the other side of the camera? I don't want to shoot toward you. Okay, right here. Okay, I'm going to shoot close to you. Here we go. Set. Here we go. Ready. And action. Go! Motherfucker.
So,
Holy shit!
can you give us an idea? Is it important when
Wait
we
a second.
hear,
They said
when you're
cut,
on a movie set and you hear the word cut?
and he just
Is
fired
it
it.
important that the actors not continue to fire the guns?
He said,
Yes.
mother
And
effer.
when you say cut, everything stops, and it's not just from a creative standpoint, it's also from a safety standpoint. Keep in mind, you're dealing with stunts, special effects, explosives.
It seems like
et
he
cetera,
did
et cetera.
not
So
mean
the
to
word
do
cut
that.
is said, everything should cease immediately.
So in this instance where Mr. Baldwin was firing the gun after the word cut, is there anything that you would have done?
I would file that under the category of going, as the old saying goes, off script. He went off script there and fired for whatever reason that I guess he felt he needed to, but I would have probably said something to him about that as well.
Afterwards?
Afterwards.
Okay.
I would have asked him why he did it, and I would have probably phrased it in a way that it was like, is something wrong with the firearm? Did you have it cocked? Was your finger still on the trigger? Why did that extra round go off at the end?
Yeah. Now, obviously, Ms. Gutierrez is not as experienced as you are. Does her lack of experience, in your opinion, change the amount of responsibility she has as the armorer on the movie set?
Once you take, I would like to expound on that a
Sure,
little bit.
move your microphone a little closer if you can, if it will move. Okay.
Alec Baldwin
Once
does
you
not
take
look
on
good.
the responsibility of safety for another person, you take on a responsibility of making sure that you do what's necessary, even if it's inconvenient, even if it's not in your best interest. And if that isn't something that you feel capable of doing, then you should never step into that position. And it's unfortunate, I feel, that Ms. Gutierrez's experience level on this film may not have worked in her favor. Is the best thing I could probably say there. However, she took the position, and therefore these people on the movie set depended on her guidance and her professionalism to keep anyone from being harmed. And convenience isn't an option.
But everyone's safety shouldn't depend on one single person. Because if that one person messes up, it's awful. Everyone should be, especially production and the directors, should be making sure it's safe.
Cross-exam.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Carpenter.
Sir.
Yes, sir. I want to first talk to you
Here
about
we
your
go.
experience and
Here we
background.
go.
It sounds like you were in the police force for how many years?
I worked on and off in different law enforcement groups since about, I want to say about 94 up, and I would bounce back and forth in different departments.
How many years total were you in the police force?
If you count total, I would say probably 4 or 5.
Okay. You were in SWAT?
I worked on New Orleans Police Department SWAT during Katrina.
Okay, sir, and you were in Katrina?
That's correct.
And then you also worked after that. That's when you started in the movie industry?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sir, so how would you say in total, how many years do you have firearms experience?
Including film?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, I would think. Makes me feel old. Probably 30 plus years.
Okay, and in 30 plus years, I take it you've developed protocols, you've developed best practices over that time. That's probably evolved.
Yes, sir.
So, sir, when you started, is it fair to say you probably didn't have those same practices you have now?
That would be correct.
Okay. And you've been trained both in the military, the police and the film industry, and over time you've developed those series of practices and protocols?
Correct.
Okay, sir, and do I understand from that there is no national certification of armorers?
That is correct, especially in the southeastern United States.
Okay, sir. And that means there's no governing body that certifies how much training or experience armorers have to have?
Correct.
Okay. And I know that you said earlier that 40 hours of training was something that you would think would be required. Am I wording that correctly?
Yes, sir, it is a minimum.
Okay, as a minimum. Now, and that's from your experience and background, but that's not in any kind of protocol or written format as in an armor.
That's correct, sir. And those hours, if I might add, would just be for safety handling. If you were going to additionally add the work as a professional armorer, you would need some OTJ, some on-to-the-job training under tutelage.
Okay, sir, so ideally there would be a national body that would have a set hours, 40 hours minimum, then on-the-job training a certain amount, and that would be the practice before an armorer is certified.
It seems like the industry needs changes, not just one person.
That was not the case. Is that correct, sir?
To the best of my knowledge, yes, sir.
Okay, and also there is a difference, is there not, between union and a non-union armorer?
Well, you can be in the union and work on a non-union show. The union armors, depending on which union you're in, like the 44 out of California has different regulations and different safety standards. So really is the point of union gauges and follows the craft a little bit better, but it kind of interchanges depending on which job you want to work on.
Okay, now when from working over the course of your career, there's different tiers. There's lower tier movies, lower budget, and there's higher tier movies.
Correct.
Okay, sir, and I think you said that in your practice now, where you're at now, you try to work with the higher tier movies. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, sir, and you're established, you have your production company. You try to work with the reputable suppliers like ISS, correct?
Yes, sir.
You're aware from your experience that people just starting out, that may be working on these lower tier movies, you're not going to have the kind of resources, management support, that kind of thing. Is that a fair statement?
It would be.
Okay, sir. And on those lower tier movies, would you agree with me? A lot of times because they're lower budget, because of how they allocate funds, there's unsafe practices that may occur.
That is correct. That would be a correct statement.
Yep.
Okay, sir. And would you also agree
I
that
knew he was going to talk about
the
this.
production has some responsibility as well to set the safety tone and to make sure certain safety practices are occurring on that set?
Most certainly.
Okay, sir. And that would also include the first assistant director?
Well, the first assistant director kind of runs the tone and tempo of the movie set itself, whereas the production company would be the governing body that would put these safety standards into practice that are already present.
Okay, sir. And part of that safety responsibility, for example, if there were negligent discharges like there were on this film, there should be a chain of custody and reporting format and then something done to address that if there's a safety issue like that. Would you agree?
I would.
Okay, sir. And on this set, you knew that from your review and your work in this case, there were 2 negligent discharges. Is that correct?
Correct. I'm familiar with one. The second, I believe, may have been the prop master. I'm not 100% sure what the second one was, but I know there were 2.
Okay, sir. And on both of those, you don't know all the ins and outs of them, but you just know kind of what they occurred. One involved the prop master, Sarah Zachary. Is that right?
That is correct, to the best of my knowledge.
Now, you said earlier, and I've heard this phrase before, I'm familiar with it, 2 is 1 and 1 is none.
Correct.
So, sir, I think you applied that in this set to, ideally, would you believe there should have been 2 armors?
Yes, they should have had more than one armor in
Yep.
this movie.
Okay.
And then they had her
that's
working a
because, in your
second
opinion,
job.
this was a gun-heavy set, is that right?
Yes.
So, on a gun-heavy set like this, it's ideal to have 2 armors. Were you aware that the Rust production company actually had Miss Gutierrez-Reed working as a part-time armor?
Yes, I was.
Okay, and is that, so that, because you believe there should have been 2, I take it that's not an advisable practice on this movie?
No, it is not.
Okay. And were you aware that Miss Gutierrez-Reed sometimes would have them to do props duties and take away from her armor duties?
Yes.
Okay. And sir, in anything that you read, were you ever aware that on days when they brought out real firearms, Miss Gutierrez-Reed also would have to run and do props duties?
It is my understanding that she was having to do that continuously.
Okay. And sir, were you aware, or have you learned in your course of your review that production treated Miss Gutierrez-Reed as some days were prop days, some days were armor days, and that's how they allocated that?
From a financial standpoint, yes.
Okay. And sir, if they bring out real firearms and it's a prop day, those firearms don't magically change into props, obviously. They still require an armor. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, you said that those firearms should first come from a legitimate prop house verified safe source, and that chain of custody is very important. Is that right, sir?
That is correct.
Okay. And chain of custody, because you were a police officer, is also important in evidentiary items.
That's right.
Okay. So with regard to a firearm, you want to maintain that chain of custody as the armor and going to the actor and coming right back. Is that fair?
That's fair to say, yes.
Okay. Now, if on this set, if the first assistant director took possession of that, I think you've already said that should never happen. Is that right, sir?
That's correct.
Okay. And under no circumstance should the first assistant director be possessing those firearms. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I know that you also said that multiple layers of safety is important. And on this, several of the videos, we'll get into those more in a second, but I noticed Mr. Halls, the first assistant director. I don't know if you knew what he looked like, but Ms. Morrissey said to assume. Did you see that individual?
I did.
Okay. Now, in certain videos that we saw, if Ms. Gutierrez-Reed is not present, do you understand under the safety bulletin that then that falls to the first assistant director for responsibility for safety?
The safety aspect, yes, but the gun handling, no.
Okay. So under that scenario, if Ms. Gutierrez-Reed, for example, has been sent off to do props duties, would it be incumbent on the first assistant director to call her back? Somebody call her back to come back and deal with the gun handling?
Yes.
Okay. So if there's a circumstance where that happens, you would expect as a professional armor with your years of experience, somebody to call her back and say, come back, we need you on this gun scene.
Right. If there was a firearm needed to be delivered to or used in a scene, then yes, they should have called her back. She should have been present.
Okay, sir. And with
Jason
regard to
is making some
the
points.
union, that we talked about briefly, in the early stages, do you know people have to get certain hours to become a part of the union?
That's correct.
Okay. And while you're doing that, sometimes people have to take jobs in these lower tier movies?
That is true.
Okay. And again, to do that, sometimes you're going to have to deal with situations where you have a part-time position. But that's not something you would ever think would be advisable for an armorer.
No, it should not be.
Okay. And sir, let me ask you
Oh,
this.
shit.
Even if it's a movie set with two guns or a really small grouping, is it ever advisable to have a part-time armorer like this?
So what you're describing is a day player versus a run of show, ROS. And so, yes, sometimes if there's a show that's only using a couple scenes that have firearms in it or a few firearms, then they can call in an armorer for a day player 1 or 2 days to come in and handle that one particular thing, and then that be it.
Okay, and when would a day player scenario be okay to do?
I can tell you one of the last times I worked on Interview with a Vampire, the latest television series, and they had one scene in a funeral home where the actor was shooting a derringer at someone, and they called me in to day play for that exact scene only, and that would be an example.
Okay, but on this particular, I'm sorry about the things you're doing. Is that not better?
Yeah, didn't you turn this up?
I want to know what the jury is thinking so
Okay,
bad.
thank you very much.
Okay.
Because I'm just thinking, this started with
on this-
production.
on this particular Western set, when you've got so many firearms, you wouldn't have a situation where you'd have a day player, that kind of thing.
No, I would not think so. It's too many moving parts, too many firearms out at all times.
Because we saw in those videos, and I understand what you're saying, there was a lack of muzzle discipline in several scenes, and you described that. We didn't see, though, in fairness, the entire video of the context. Would you agree with that?
Just a clip, that's all we saw.
Okay.
Correct.
So in fairness, sir, you don't know at times when you were saying, I assume, you don't know if Miss Gutierrez-Reed came up after and said something to those people about muzzle discipline?
No, I do not.
Okay. And
Good
sometimes,
point.
and I'm not holding this because you're just
Good
looking
point.
at the clip too, like all of us.
Sure.
But in certain situations where you might think there's a full blank, there might be a quarter load. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. So, in fact, another scene I think we were looking at, you
Wait.
talked about replacing a replica with a live weapon, and he was going to get thrown back into the wall. In that instance, I don't know if you were totally sure whether that was a replica.
No, I was not. No.
Okay. On the Rust set, there were primarily real firearms. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Do you know, sir, how many replicas there were?
I do not. Not at that count.
Okay. So in general, every time the Rust set had guns out on that set, they should have had the armorer present doing armor duties. Is that right?
Yes.
And in fact, I think you said they should have had 2 armorers.
That would be very fair.
Okay. And sir, with regard to the industry, you may have answered this. If you have, I'm sorry, but is there any specific licensing requirement for armorers in the industry?
It is not.
Okay. Is there any specific checklist or written protocols for duties of an armorer?
Industry standard and safety protocols put out by IATSE and SAG, et cetera, and CSATF. But aside from those guidelines put out, that it's pretty much industry standard. There's no hard and fast rules other than just what's expected on set.
Okay, sir, and I know with your professional
But she wasn't
experience
in a
and how long
union.
you've been doing this, you've developed very good practices and best practices. But in terms of an armorer just starting out, there's nothing really to guide a specific checklist, for example.
Nothing short of the Cooper's 4 rules.
Cooper's 4 rules, which I want to talk to you about that for a second. Those are what you describe. Treat every firearm as loaded. Don't point at something you don't want to destroy. And keep your finger out of the trigger guard unless you're ready to shoot, those kind of things.
That is correct, yes, sir.
And sir, you saw several clips with Mr. Baldwin violating those rules?
Correct.
Okay. And I think towards the end I want to talk about that a little more, but he was using the firearm to point at people?
In that particular scene, yes, sir.
Okay. And he also,
Mr.
I think,
Baldwin.
did you notice if he had his finger in the trigger guard in any of those?
In
Looking
that
bad.
particular scene, I noticed that he did not. He had it on the trigger guard on the outside.
Okay. And was that the one where Miss Gutierrez-Reed was present?
That was one where she advised crew to step away from the line of fire.
Okay. So, do you know whether she had also told Mr. Baldwin before the scene to make sure he didn't have his finger in the trigger guard?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, in that particular video, clearing the line of fire is an important part of what an armorer does. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, sir. And Miss Gutierrez-Reed did indicate she was trying to do that.
Yes.
Okay. Now, with regard to vintage weapons in this type of Western set, in your experience and training, do they require any specific training for safe use?
Not apart from what we've talked about, the basic. They're not a complex weapon system. They're a very rudimentary weapon system. In fact, one of the first modern types of firearms in that category. So aside from just safe weapons handling, they don't require any specificity in that.
Okay, sir. Now, I know that you testified earlier that you're a big proponent on training.
Very.
Sounds like, okay. Now, were you aware on this Rust set that production had a one-day training with all the actors in production?
Yes, I'd heard that.
Okay, sir. And to you, with your background experience, to you, would that have been advisable to have everybody trained in mass on that one day?
It would not have been advisable. It all depends also on the level of experience for each individual actor. Some may have more experience. You can vet them out pretty quickly by just speaking to them for a moment and see how they, what actionable words they give you back for your questions. Having said that, you make your decision on who needs more training or less training based off of that. But having a one-day mass training is not the best way of doing it.
Okay, sir. And with regard to the stuntmen, were you ever aware in your review of this case that they were not participants at that training?
I did not know if they were or not, no.
Okay. You talked about the steps an armor should take to prepare a particular scene. Now, one of them, and it can it vary by the complexity of the scene?
It would very much, well, the basic fundamental safety things
Yes.
of checking the firearm, doing an audit on the firearm weapons that you're going to use, the ammunition you're going to use, that remains a standard. Now, you're exactly right in the fact that if you're using a M249 or something that's a complex belt-fed weapon system, crew-served weapon system, then you would need to have more training, more time spent with it, and complex. In this particular case, we're dealing with more vintage, as you said, a rudimentary weapon.
Yes,
so yes,
sir.
to answer your question directly, yes, the more complex, the more time needed.
Okay. And sir, did you know on the day, October 21st, that production was about 2 hours behind schedule that morning?
I was aware that they were behind. I didn't know exact time. Yeah.
Okay. And in a situation where, I know you said you need to slow down, but you knew they were probably in a rush situation that day, at least a little faster.
Correct.
Okay. Now, is it advisable in those instances to have a safety briefing before a scene with firearms every time?
Yes. Each day you should have a safety briefing if firearms going to be used, and camera can rush all they want to, or props can rush all they want to.
Do that.
Those three
They definitely did
areas
not
of
do
the set that are dangerous, they need to always take their time.
They had like
Okay.
one safety
So, sir,
meeting.
I want to ask you if you would assume that for a moment that Baldwin is in the church, he's has the weapon, Miss Gutierrez-Reed is outside, she's not aware that he's going to be using that weapon. At that point, he goes off script, calls an audible, and starts using it. Should someone in that church have gone and got Miss Gutierrez-Reed and brought her in?
If Ms. Gutierrez was not present in there with the live weapon, then someone should have looked up at the point and said, "Where is our armorer?" and called her in.
Okay. And that would have been important for her to come in and monitor that scene, do the safety briefing, those kind of things with Mr. Baldwin. Is that right, sir?
Safety briefing generally is conducted by the first assistant director, and then sometimes the armorer is allowed to speak if anything is needed to be done at that point in time. But yes, before that is used or any of that stuff is implemented into the day, and then those things should have been done.
Okay, sir. And as part of that, would you expect that they call her back in? She needs to take the weapon do that safety check you talked about with Mr. Halls, the first assistant, and then once that's cleared, it goes back to Mr. Baldwin?
That's correct. Took the weapon, cleared it with at least her DP or her first assistant director, a two-part check, and then obviously the actor that's handling it and anyone else in the room.
Okay, sir.
That wanted to see it.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Okay. And were you aware whether Miss Gutierrez-Reed was having to attend to prop duties on the moment of the 21st when Mr. Baldwin did do the rehearsal scene?
No, sir. I was not aware of what she was doing.
Okay. Some of those videos that we watched just now, did you notice that Mr. Baldwin was essentially ordering people around?
Yes.
And I think we saw one of them where he said something like, go, 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 reload, reload, something like that?
Right.
Okay. I think he said that here we see Mr. Baldwin ordering not only the armorer, but looks like the camera crew.
Right.
Okay. Now, in that instance, when she's being ordered, I think you mentioned that you would step in and say, take them aside gently and say, we're going to have to slow down. This is a safety issue.
Right.
Okay. Now, with regard to an A-list actor like Mr. Baldwin, would you agree that it would be difficult for a young armorer trying to get in her second or third production? She's not had 100 productions. Would that be a difficult situation?
It would be a difficult situation.
Okay. And
I like how honest this guy
with
is.
that much speed and that much happening and being rushed, and it's Alec Baldwin, is that something that it didn't look like anybody was doing anything?
Right.
And including, I think we saw Mr. Halls in a few of those. It didn't look like he said anything either, did he?
It didn't appear to.
Okay.
It's production, man. It's production.
With regard to the props department, I forgot to ask you something. Miss Sarah Zachary was the props head. Were you aware of that?
Yes, I was.
Okay, and were you aware whether she was Miss Gutierrez-Reed's boss as part of that department?
Yes, typically the prop master is the boss of the armor. Correct.
Were you aware whether Miss Zachary had training in the use of firearms?
Sarah Zachary?
No, I wasn't aware of that. The only knowledge I had of her was her statements that she was not proficient with firearms.
She was the same age as Hannah. Is the same age.
I think you mentioned in your direct testimony, if she was trained or proficient, then there's a certain instance where she can handle weapons as well.
Correct.
Okay. You talked a little bit about gun safes and properly maintaining weapons. Were you aware whether production provided Miss Gutierrez and Miss Zachary a prop cart?
I'm not aware of the prop cart.
Okay. Did you know the quality of the safe that was provided to them?
No, sir.
Okay. And do you know, I know you said you had a Pelican box, but do you know whether they provided Miss Gutierrez-Reed anything like that?
I do not.
Okay. Some of those scenes in the videos we saw, there's blank fire by Mr. Baldwin, and the cameras are right there. We just went through that. Did you see any of those plexiglass shields?
Well, flat on the front of it. I did not. I think maybe there was one on the front of ACAM now, but I'm not aware of it for 100%. But it may have been one on there. Thinking back now.
And can you tell the jury what those plexiglass shields are used for?
So the plexiglass shields are used to, you would hope that they were there to protect the operators, but they're really there to protect the cameras. So the cameras are very expensive, and they don't want them damaged in the middle of any kind of gunfire or anything of that nature. Generally small shields that go over the lens of the camera to avoid any kind of damage.
Okay, sir, and as part of that, would you agree that in Hollywood there's certain tricks they try to use to make sure, even though it looks like it's pointed at the camera, so it's actually pointed camera right or left?
That's correct.
Okay. And in some of those videos, is it fair to say that, in fact, one, I think you mentioned Miss Gutierrez-Reed was holding a shotgun with the muzzle pointed upward.
Right.
Is it fair to say it's difficult from that angle to determine whether it was pointed directly at her or away from her?
The angle of the firearm would be hard to determine, but the general handling would be pretty standard.
Yes, sir. You would say that it should have been pointed differently.
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay. A couple questions about the dummy rounds on set. I think you said you inspected them. Did you find a mixture of types of dummies?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And sir, you've done 100 films as an armorer. You've been around this business a long time. Was it your conclusion these were lower quality dummies, for lack of a better word?
That would be correct.
Okay. And some of them, is it true that some of them rattled, some of them did not?
As far as the rattling, I'm not sure if all of them rattled or did not. I know that some of them had holes drilled in the base of them. They were just a mixed assortment.
And sir, did you also know there was a round called a Denex round? Are you familiar with those?
I'm familiar with the company Denex. I believe it's a Spanish company. They make a lot of replicas and whatnot. They do make fake, I wouldn't call them a dummy. I would call them a fake bullet. They don't make them to industry standards. They make them to, let's say you had a display case in your office and you wanted it to look like an Old West gun from New Mexico. You'd have the weapon in there, which was a replica that looked very authentic, but it wasn't a live gun. And then you'd have some of those Denex rounds in there to look like you had the live rounds in there. They would be for display only.
For display only.
Yes.
Now, would you think it, with a part-time armorer, various types of mixture of dummy rounds, including rounds that rattle and rounds that don't, is that a safe situation? when
Yeah,
someone's
this is
trying to manage
live.
that?
No.
And are you aware that production was the one that sourced the ammunition? I mean, purchased the ammunition.
I'm not aware of who actually purchased it. No.
Okay. In general, in your experience on movie sets, when ammunition needs to be purchased, is that through the props department, production, or who does that?
Generally, the props department via the armorer and whoever the armorer is gives their a recommendation of where they would like to get this from, and then they submit the invoice to production to be reimbursed. On a lower production, it would be fair to say that the production may pay directly to the source of the ammunition, but most importantly, it's through the chain of the armorer or the prop master if they're a certified person on the books of this, ATF books of this person, to receive it through that process.
Okay, sir. Now, these dummy rounds cost some money. They're not super expensive, but, well, there's various types, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So you wouldn't typically just throw the dummy rounds away after a scene, would you?
No.
Okay. I think you mentioned that obviously live rounds never have a place on set.
Correct.
Okay. So as part of the safety bulletins, you mentioned Mr. Baldwin had a replica Denex 45 and also the real 45 Colt. Is that true?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay. Under the safety bulletins, isn't it advisable to use rubber weapons whenever possible?
Yes, absolutely.
So in the tragic situation when Mr. Baldwin was doing the blocking rehearsal, with your training experience and how long you've been in this, would it have been advisable never to use a real weapon in that scene?
Absolutely.
And in fact, under a blocking where you're not even filming, would you ever want to use a live weapon?
There's absolutely no need for it unless the actor specifically requested, in which case we fall back to the protocol. We talk about the armor being present, et cetera, et cetera. You can, in a blocking scene, literally props many times have Nerf guns or you shoot your finger. I mean, it's just for drawing focus and trying to make sure that everything is in the right spot that it's supposed to be in.
Yes, sir. Okay. And so with regard to that, if Mr. Baldwin, I don't know if you're aware of this, if he always preferred the real weapons, is that something that would have been advisable?
It would have been a bit outside the norm. I have worked with some actors that from time to time wanted to use the real weapons. It just costs more time and effort on the armorer's part to be present each time you're doing a blocking scene with something that's not necessary.
Okay.
Bye,
Just a
Ray.
moment, sir. I'm just reviewing a few.
Yeah, why weren't they using fake guns when they weren't even shooting? Like, that doesn't even make sense. Because why risk it?
Okay, I want to move to the videos just that we watched. 149. Again, we're not certain if Ms. Gutierrez-Reed was present or not in that. that particular video?
Is that the one where the camera panned 90 degrees, or was that just?
And I'm sorry, that was the first one we watched.
Where, with the young actor came up close to camera?
Yes.
I can't see behind camera, so not sure who was there.
Okay. Now, I know that you mentioned that with regard to the next video we played, that we know now that there were live rounds on set.
That's right.
So Mr. Baldwin needed to treat the real weapon as if it was loaded.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, in the review of this case, you're not certain when those live rounds appeared on set. What day, is that right?
No.
Okay. Or how they got on set?
No.
Okay. But in any event, Mr. Baldwin at that moment should have still treated that weapon as if it was loaded, going back to the other rules.
Correct.
Did you read the OSHA report in this case?
It's part of it, some of it.
Okay. And do you know that they found fault with production for several safety violations?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you know that those safety violations for that there was a financial penalty?
Correct.
Okay. On this particular budget, did you review any of the budgetary items for Rust?
Not many. Not
Okay.
many, no.
Did you look at whether there was money budgeted for the armor?
I did not.
Okay.
I don't know if you heard me, B, but yeah, this is live. He's thinking real hard. The gears are
And
turning.
One more on video 158. I know that there were some assumptions made about various things, but is it fair to say Ms. Gutierrez-Reed may have instructed, if we can't see it on the video, she may have made those instructions?
Remind me which one 158 was, please, sir?
That one, sir, and I'm getting a little confused, but Baldwin's yelling, one more, here we go, come on.
Gotcha.
Okay. And on that one, we don't know exactly what Ms. Gutierrez-Reed may have done?
No.
Okay. On video 160, this is where Mr. Baldwin instructs the armor how to do her job, telling her to, you saw that video.
Right.
Did you know whether the rounds in her fanny pack, whether they were sequestered?
I did not.
Okay.
Hannah looks extra tired today. She looks
Who,
done.
in terms of a blocking of the scene, directs that? Is that the director?
The director generally blocks the scene along with the director of photography, the DP. They work together.
Last portion you talked about, you said that Baldwin went off script, and that was the video where they yelled cut, and then Mr. Baldwin cussed, and he fired, correct? And again, would you agree that's an unsafe practice Mr. Baldwin is doing?
Sure. Yes, absolutely.
And now that we know what happened, we now have seen another instance where he went off script, correct?
Correct.
Then I have just a moment. You don't have no further questions, sir.
All right, thank you. Redirect.
Redirect, let's go.
Mr. Carpenter,
Carrie, there she goes.
when you first started out as an armorer, would you have held a shotgun with the barrel pointing in the direction of your own head?
I would not.
And when you first started out as an armorer, would you have permitted a stuntman to hand a double-barrel shotgun to a child?
I would not.
So those aren't things that you learned over the years not to do, correct?
Correct.
Can everyone hear Mr. Carpenter? Okay.
Sorry, guys.
Take a shot every time Carrie moves her glasses. Just kidding, don't do that. You would die.
Dangerous handling of the shotgun in the videos by the stuntman, was it ongoing?
It was.
And did you ever see Ms. Gutierrez intervene?
And not in the videos that I've watched, no.
Did you ever hear her voice call out to the stuntman telling him not to do that?
I did not.
And during those videos that we saw with the stuntman and the gun, he was actually, on numerous occasions, pointing the gun at people, correct?
Correct.
And he was doing that when cameras were not rolling.
That is correct.
Is it the armorer's job to make that stop?
It is.
Regardless of whether this is their first movie or their 100th movie?
Correct. The safety protocols are in place to mitigate accidents, and they're there for a reason. That you have to follow the standard of safety, i.e. checking firearms, checking rounds, checking dummies, and maintaining, again, I know I've said this more than a few times, maintaining the 4 safety rules in their entirety.
And you indicated that a lot of the training that armorers receive is on-the-job training, right?
That's correct.
And in reviewing the discovery in this case, did you become aware of how Ms. Gutierrez received her training?
Somewhat. Understood that it was a little bit of tutelage from her father, from Reed, and that is about all that I knew.
And let me stop you there. Are you aware of who he is?
I am.
And based on what you know of Mr. Reed, is he qualified?
He's a qualified armorer to work. He works in a specific genre of films more than anything, and he's been on a lot of major shows.
Does he have a reputation in the industry?
He does.
Oh, sure.
Ooh. I think the state is trying to make it apparent that her stepdad was a veteran Hollywood armorer, and he's the one who trained her. So she should have
direct the
known
question a little more.
all the safety
Does
protocols.
Mr. Reed have a reputation for being qualified?
Yes.
Based on everything that you know about this case, was it a low-quality dummy round that killed Ms. Hutchins?
No.
And whose responsibility is it to ferret out any possible live rounds on a movie set?
It's the armorer's responsibility.
And sir, I want to ask you, have you ever worked on a movie set where you discovered live rounds?
I have.
And how did you discover them?
I came in initially as a day player, then left the show. Unfortunately, the prop master had a health issue. The show called me back in to do run of show for the rest of the show, so I'd been gone and did not know what they had, what the equipment was, et cetera, et cetera. So the first thing that you do is an audit of the entirety of their equipment. So I went to the safe, went through all of the safe, all the firearms, looked at everything, went through all of their dummy rounds that they had available, and I picked up, you've done this long enough, you can just pretty much know it by feel. I picked up a box of 12-gauge rounds that were used for set dressing, which is just decoration such as this handkerchief or that pair of glasses on a set in a scene where these bad guys were just loading their guns, getting ready to do something bad. And that had apparently been used in a scene prior to me being on the show. I picked up the box of shells, and they were in a plastic container. I immediately felt the weight was wrong on them. And I took one out, looked at it, and it appeared to be live to me. I took it back to the workstation, dissected it, and it was a live round. At that point in time,
shit.
regardless of the health issues the prop master had, I immediately contacted him and said, what happened? And I said, we're shutting everything down. We're taking everything out of this truck, getting rid of everything on this set immediately. And he said, absolutely.
Okay.
And that's what we did.
So you actually just stopped production.
I stopped our part of it. Nobody was getting a firearm out on
Wow.
set, period.
Okay.
They can film the scene on the beach if they want to, but no
No
one
way.
can get a firearm at that point.
No way Alec
And-
Baldwin would
and
even
you
let that
found
happen.
The live ammunition by just doing
They
your
were on a
inventory,
tight
correct?
schedule.
That is correct.
On a movie set, whose responsibility is it to maintain chain of custody of a gun?
It is the armor.
And whose responsibility is it to maintain chain of custody of ammunition?
The armor.
In your opinion, should Ms. Gutierrez have given the gun to Mr. Halls?
No.
She had been doing that
Should
the whole
Ms.
time.
Gutierrez have given the gun to Mr. Halls and then left the room?
No.
I'm pretty sure he like
And
asked her
let's
to give it
say
to him.
that she's got prop duties. Is that an excuse for an armorer to leave the room and leave a real gun out of her sight?
Unfortunately, no.
When you are an armorer on a movie set, and let's say you also have prop duties, how do you prioritize
He
those
said,
things?
unfortunately,
They
no.
generally, if it's a movie where they only have a few firearms, you can work props on the days that there's no firearms present, and armor on the days that weapons are present. But an intermingling, the two never shall meet. In other words, if there's firearms on set and you're doing prop duties, you're an armorer. You're not a props person because you cannot do both jobs adequately.
Okay.
Then that's
And are
production's
you aware
fault
that
for making her do
October
both.
21st, 2021, she was actually, that was one of her armorer days.
I was
Were you-
not aware of that.
Based on your review of the documents in this case, who loaded the gun before it was handed to Mr. Halls?
Ms. Gutierrez.
And on a movie set, whose responsibility is it to ensure that anyone handling a gun on set has received proper training?
The armor.
Mr. Bowles asked you a question about whether or not it would be difficult for a young armorer just starting out to perhaps ruffle the feathers of, I think he referred to him as an A-list actor. And you indicated that that might be a difficult position. Is that right?
That is correct.
Is she saying he's not A-list?
Is the armorer required to do it anyway?
If it becomes a safety issue, yes.
In your opinion on the set of Rust, was it a safety issue?
Yes, it was.
She's been taking jabs at Alec Baldwin.
You were asked some questions about Ms. Zachary being
And it's not even his trial.
Ms. Gutierrez's boss. And I want to ask you, in the film industry, can the prop master tell the armorer what to do with regard to firearms?
They can administratively tell them what to do with firearms, i.e., we're not going to use any today on scene for this reason, or maybe they choose to get the firearms from a different location that the armor wants. But from a safety standpoint, the armor is the final say.
Okay. And you were asked some questions about the safe that was used to hold the guns in this case. Were you aware that Ms. Gutierrez actually picked out the safe?
I was not. Excuse me.
And you were asked some questions about Mr. Baldwin demanding that he have his real gun during the blocking. Who permitted the real gun to be used during the blocking rehearsal by Mr. Baldwin?
Objection is speculation.
What are you going to say about approaching from now on? Come up on every objection.
He can't just say objection? Speculation? I'm pretty sure that's normal. He didn't start arguing. The judge does not look happy.
Do you recall the question?
Could you repeat, please?
Who permitted the real gun to be used during the blocking rehearsal by Mr. Baldwin?
Miss Gutierrez.
All right. I don't have anything else. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Your Honor, may I ask a few more questions?
Do you have any objection to that?
As long as they remain within the scope of redirect, I do not have an objection.
Go ahead.
Sir, a few more questions. On that last question, you're not certain whether, or do you know whether Mr. Halls handed Mr. Baldwin the weapon?
It's my understanding that he did hand the weapon off to Mr. Baldwin.
And is it your understanding as well that Miss Gutierrez-Reed was not in the church at the time Mr. Halls handed him the weapon?
Also true, yes, sir.
Okay. And with regard to the prop duties that were discussed on redirect, were you aware whether production was directing Miss Gutierrez-Reed to focus more on props duties?
I was not.
Okay. Were you aware that on the day in question there were a number of props that needed to be present?
No.
Counsel approach.
Here we go again. I think they're gonna break for lunch after this witness. Oh.
All right. Counsel approach.
Yeah. Well, I thought they would break for lunch. Why are they following that man out of the courtroom so closely? That was so weird. Having to testify is already so scary. I mean, I've never done it, but it just seems scary. And then add in the fact that you have like 4 cameras pointed at you and like millions of people watching. Judge has a pink hydro flask. I'm also team hydro flask. Mine is blue though.
Face the judge. Raise your right hand.
Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Who is this guy?
Yes.
All right. Have a seat. Talk into the microphone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Would you please state your name for the record?
My name's Ryan Winterstern.
And would you spell your last name for us, please?
Winterstern.
Thank you. Mr. Winterstern, were you involved in the Rust movie?
Yes.
And what was your involvement?
I was one of the producers.
And as a producer of the movie, can you give the jury an idea of what your description, your job description was as a producer?
Me specifically, or the producers in general?
You specifically.
I was one of the producers who helped procure the financing for the film.
Okay. And were you on the set of the filming pretty regularly?
Yes.
Okay. Would you say that you were on the set every day?
Yes.
Okay. And what would you typically do while you were on set?
It just depended on the day. Sometimes I'd be a liaison for the actors.
Okay. The primary reason that we've asked you here today is because the defendant testified at an OSHA, or actually it was an Occupational Safety Board hearing. And during the hearing, she testified that she spoke to two producers, one named Ryan and one named Nathan. She wasn't clear about the last names, but she did identify the first name. She said that she had come to Ryan and Nathan and complained that she needed additional armor time to work, in particular with Mr. Alec Baldwin concerning his cross draw. Do you have any recollection of a conversation with the defendant about her needing additional armor time?
I don't recollect that conversation.
Okay. And do you believe that she had that conversation with you, that it would be something you would have remembered?
I believe so, that I would, if the conversation did happen.
Okay. Did you have many conversations with her?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So it's likely something you would have remembered, you say?
I assume so.
Okay. Thank you. I'll pass the witness.
Cross-exam.
Good morning, Mr. Winterstern.
I think she was trying to hand her a note.
I believe you said that your involvement pertained to financing, right?
Yes.
Okay. Is the financing of a film gathering investors to contribute money for the funding of a film? Is that what you mean by that?
That could be part of it.
Okay. Now, can anyone just invest in a film, or do you have to be an accredited investor with a high net worth?
I believe anyone can invest in a film.
Okay. Is it true that a film that's made here in New Mexico can have it actually receive about 40% of its costs back as a transferable and sellable tax credit?
I don't know the exact. There is a tax credit though.
Okay, you don't know the specifics, but would you agree with me that there is a tax credit where you get costs back?
Yes.
And that tax credit is in fact transferable and saleable?
I don't know specifically. I know that at some point there is a credit that can be monetized.
Okay, and that credit that's monetized, that would be there regardless of whether the film even makes money at the box office, right?
I believe so.
So would you agree with me then that Rust was essentially a tax shelter?
I don't understand the question.
Okay, do you know what a tax shelter is?
I don't know the definition.
What is your? I just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing here. So do you know what a tax shelter is, basically?
Objection. Asked and answered.
What did I tell counsel? Because of the outburst yesterday, everything is approached. So come up.
Oh. That is why they have to approach every single time, because of that outburst yesterday. Yeah, yesterday was crazy. Okay, I can see why the judge is like, cut the cameras. We're not playing with that.
Now, you're one of the producers on this film. In the beginning, were there 6 producers for the film? Or was it 10?
There were, I believe there were 6 people listed as producers.
Okay, and who were all the producers of Rust?
So there was myself, Alec Baldwin, Ryan Smith, Angel Nigam, Matt Del Piano, and Nathan Klinger.
Okay. Now, to me, I'm not greatly familiar with film. That sounds a little top-heavy to me. Is that normal for a low-budget film to have so many producers?
I don't know specifically. I would say it could. Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Okay. And part of the producer's job, you mentioned financing, but it also involves the budget for the film, right?
Well, I mean, in terms of what?
In terms of the budgeting for how funds are going to be allocated to make the film.
Oh, a budget is made, but that would be by the line producer.
So you're saying that just the line producer makes the budget? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, the line producer is the one who creates the budget.
Did you have any role in helping create the budget?
He probably approved it.
I received the budget. I saw the budget, so I was part of the process in terms of I was able to see the budget.
All right, and you then approved
This guy
the
is
budget
shady.
also, right?
Objection.
This guy is shady. He's like not answering anything directly. Like, why? And the woman yesterday who was also a part of production, she was also very dodgy with questions and was like acting confused.
Mr. Winterstern, did you approve, were you involved in approving the budget in this case?
I would say that my role was to procure the financing to match the budget.
I see, okay. And you became involved in this film, it was several months prior to the actual filming, right?
Yes.
How many months was it?
I don't know for certain, but roughly I would say 3 to 6 months would be safe.
So for 3 to 6 months before starting to film, you collaborated with the other producers to plan this film, right?
Yes.
And you planned who to hire?
Can you be more specific?
Sure. Who to hire in terms of the hierarchy? For instance, Gabrielle Pickle.
She's being
yes.
specific,
Okay.
Dude.
And
Answer the
who to
damn
hire
question.
In terms of who is going to assist with props, armors.
No, that would come more closer to production.
Okay. Well, you were a producer, right? Oh, but I guess the question is, did you have any involvement in the process of hiring the armors?
No, not that I can recall.
He's so shady.
But your planning did involve what resources to allocate, right? To the various departments for the film?
No, not that I recall.
Okay. Are you aware of the original budget for this film? I think you did say you were involved in the financing and reviewed the budget. So were you aware the original budget for this film was $7,000 for the armor, $7,000 for an assistant armor, and also funding for a full-time prop master?
No, not that I recall.
Okay, are you saying that you don't recall what it is, or that that's not what you remember?
I think what I'm saying is that the line producer creates the budget, and it's predicated on union obligations, and so they would create that predicated on what that would be. I don't really get involved in what they call the below the line aspect of it.
It has almost been 3 years,
line, you were above
but
the line, right?
you would remember.
Producer is part of the above the line.
And as a producer, you don't know what funds were set aside for the armor?
I did not know. Not that I recall.
Do you recall what day
But he approved the budget.
Filming actually began?
Just specifically?
Right.
I know it would have been in October of 2021. I don't know, I can't remember the exact date. I would assume it was early October or around October 10th.
Okay. And do you know how many total filming days were allotted for this film?
21.
I believe it was, at the time, I believe it was 21.
Okay. And you said you didn't know, I believe, specifics on the budget breakdown for what was allotted for the armor or part-time or assistant armor, all of that. But were you aware that it finally came down to the set having just a part-time non-union armor with no assistant armor?
Like I said, I wasn't involved, so I don't recall.
They were supposed to
how
have
those
a
decisions were made.
full-time
Were you aware
armorer
that
and an
Halyna Gutierrez
assistant
was only
armorer.
working as an armor part-time? She was also working as props. Were you even aware of that?
But she was only
Is that
part-time
objection, Your Honor?
Yes, he's still.
in a Western shootout movie. Now, what is he objecting to? This guy is acting like he knows nothing. He definitely has his own lawyer and went over what not to say.
Are you aware of what was finally allocated in terms of the armor for arrest?
I don't recall.
Are you aware whether there were any other armors who were willing to take the terms and the pay that was being offered?
I don't know. I don't recall.
Right. I think you said on direct that you were on location. You were on location every day, right?
Yes.
And once filming began, you were actually present for some of the filming itself, right?
Yes.
He was on location every day but didn't see her working?
Who was the actual signatory for the Rust Movie Productions, LLC?
My understanding is it to be Ryan Smith.
And he was also one of the producers, right?
Yes.
And he was on location during the filming as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. Was the owner of the Rust LLC ever at one time Alec Baldwin?
I'm sorry, can you ask the question again?
Yes. Was the owner of the LLC who owned the rights, let me rephrase that, to the movie ever Alec Baldwin or his company?
That was my understanding.
Okay. So I want to be clear. So if I understand what you just said correctly, Alec Baldwin was at one time the owner of the rights to Rust LLC?
Objection.
What can you
Just a minute, he objected.
I think I know it.
Oh my goodness. This guy is so, like, dodgy with the questions. He's
So with
acting like he
respect to
doesn't know shit.
ownership
Like,
of the movie rights, what was your understanding
you
of Alec
funded
Baldwin's
and
ownership?
produced the movie.
That he had at some point commissioned a script, or through his company, and that him or his company had controlled that script.
Okay, and you said had controlled that script. Did Alec Baldwin, to your knowledge, ever sell the rights back to Rust?
Yes, that in order for the film to get made, the rights were transferred to Rust Movie Productions LLC, from my
That's
understanding.
because he got sued. It's because he got sued, right?
Was any part of your job as the producer to
Or is it
give
something
direction
else?
to the stills photographer?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Were you were also there on location when the shooting occurred, right?
I was at base camp.
Right, and base camp is on location, right?
And yes, I assume so then, yes.
Well, I want to make sure you said previously, I believe, that you were on location every day, right?
Yes.
So you recall being there on location the day of the shooting?
Yes.
What did you do? I guess, how did you become aware of the shooting?
I heard it on a walkie-talkie.
Okay. And once you heard that, what did you do?
I headed towards set.
Okay. And when you got to set, is it true that Ryan Smith was already there on location?
Yes, from what I remember.
And there was actually an attorney representing the production company there on set too, right?
That I do not know.
Okay. You don't remember talking to an attorney on the day of the shooting?
I
She
do
was
remember
there
was
before
someone, but I
the
don't know what their role was
ambulance,
specifically.
I think.
Okay. So sitting here today, are you saying you don't remember if there was an attorney on set the day of the shooting?
No, like I said, there was an attorney.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know specifically what they were doing there.
Okay. Did you know that that attorney, whether or not that attorney represented the production company?
I did not know at the time. No.
Do you know that now?
No, actually, I don't know.
Okay. And after the shooting, did you see
What?
Alec Baldwin at any point?
This guy doesn't know
Yes.
shit.
Right after the shooting? When you ran up there?
I don't recall exactly when I saw him specifically, but I do remember seeing him at some point after the shooting.
Do you ever remember seeing Alec Baldwin outside the church making phone calls after the shooting?
Yes.
And was Mr. Baldwin also there with his assistant Jonah at the time?
Yes.
And this is after the shooting?
Yes.
And did you talk to Mr. Baldwin in that moment?
I'm sorry, which moment?
The moment after the shooting, when you're there and you see him on the phone?
I did speak to him at certain points, I believe. Yeah, I remember speaking with him.
Okay. And have you communicated with Mr. Baldwin since the shooting?
Yes.
In fact, is it true that you did stay on the production after the shooting and finish the film, right?
Yes, that's correct.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Do you remember the morning of when the camera crew quit?
I'm sorry.
Do you ever remember the camera crew in this production of Rust quitting?
Yes.
Were you aware of any of the without telling us right now, were you aware of any of the grievances that the camera crew had about, were you aware of any of the grievances that they had throughout this production?
Yes.
Were you aware whether any of those grievances had to do with not being properly paid?
Not that I can recollect.
Were you
He's
aware
like,
of any
what's
of the
the word
grievances
for I
about,
don't want to answer that? Oh yeah, I can't
regarding
recall.
the camera crew quitting were about production ignoring requests about safety meetings?
Not that I can recollect.
Well, were you ever made aware of emails sent to emails sent by the camera crew stating reasons why they quit?
Well, there's only I can only recall one email.
So you were aware of an email that camera crew sent stating reasons why they quit? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. And you didn't take any steps to try to remedy the situation with the camera crew?
My understanding that the people who were in charge were handling. So I just assumed that the people who needed to take care of however that needed to be handled were doing that job.
Okay, and so you assumed that people were in charge were handling it. Who would that be? Gabrielle Pickle?
Yeah, she'd be one of the people, yes.
Would that be Dave Hall?
To a certain extent, sure, yes.
Okay. It wouldn't be Hannah Gutierrez, right? She wasn't in charge, was she?
I think the context of that question matters.
Okay. Let's talk about, were you ever made aware of accidental discharges when making this movie?
I was aware of one.
Okay.
That I can remember.
Did you, in fact, you said you were made aware of it. You actually heard it go off, didn't you?
That's how I was aware. I was aware because I heard it.
Okay. And as a result of that accidental discharge on set that you actually heard, did you direct any safety meetings about
Wow.
No.
Wow.
Okay.
Here we go. Gotcha.
Do you believe that's not your responsibility to direct safety meetings? Or to tell your people that you need to do safety meetings? I heard this accidental discharge.
My understanding is that the AD department is the safety officers.
Okay, AD. Is that David Halls also?
Dave Halls would be the AD, yes.
Okay, but AD worked for production, right?
Yes.
And you're a producer, right?
Yes.
And Alec Baldwin is a producer, right?
Here we go.
Yes.
Nice.
In fact, Alec Baldwin was not only the producer, he was also the star of the film, wasn't he?
Yes.
Would you agree with me that he would have significant influence over things that happened on that film?
I would say as an actor, yes.
He wrote, produced,
And
and
as a producer,
acted.
right?
He wrote some of it, apparently.
Like I say, it depends on the context.
Okay, and as an investor that benefits from those tax shelters?
I'm confused. I'm confused by that question.
Okay, I'll withdraw the question. Just a minute, Your Honor.
Redirect.
The defense really
Mr. Winston, do you recall
had great
the defense counsel
questions.
just asking you about whether one of the complaints from the camera crew was accidental discharges on the set?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Do you recall the defense counsel who was just standing up here asking you questions about whether one of the camera crew's complaints was regarding accidental discharges on set?
Your Honor, may we approach?
Yes, come on up.
This guy, he was a producer, but he claims he knew nothing. And he's answering the questions so weird. Like when they were like, the defense was like, so you knew there was an accidental discharge? And he was like, I became aware.
At least one accidental
When he
discharge on set.
literally heard it himself.
Yes.
And who would you expect to be in charge, the person responsible for ensuring that there are no accidental discharges on set?
My assumption would be that it would be
Overruled.
I would say it would be both the AD department overseeing safety, and also it'd be, I would assume, the role of the armorer.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
Nothing further.
excuse, thank you. All right, we're going to take our lunch break. Please be back downstairs at 1 o'clock. Please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court. Thank you.
All rise.
Okay, I'm gonna end the stream here, but I will be back in an hour. So 1 o'clock Mountain Time, 3 o'clock Eastern Time. Basically an hour. Maybe a little later just so court gets started. They're always late in terms of the audio being on and them actually questioning witnesses. So I will be back in about an hour 15. So if you don't see I'm live, but the trial started, I'll be live pretty soon after that. So yeah, come back in a little bit, like an hour. Bye y'all, thanks.